Hi, I'm Chantra Powell, and I'm the Proven Not Perfect podcast host and a best-selling author on Amazon. Do any of these words call out to you? Drive, ambition, doing, leading, creating. These words call many of us, and sometimes to heroic impact. This is all good until we forget about our own self and our own self needs, mainly care. My Village of All-Stars, they not only command position, but they command influence. Well, there's always a backstory. I myself, Chantra Powell, have had to put myself on the sideline a few times, but I'm still in the game. I'm staying in the game. The only thing different about me is that I'm proven not perfect. Enjoy. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing?
My God, I'm doing good. Okay, so we tried to make this happen for a little while, and it was a wonderful dance to get to this space with Reverend Dr. I'm going to say it right. Reverend Dr. Erin Skipworth is in the house with Proven Not Perfect community of women who are driven for success and who are inspired by conversations around business and leadership, self-care network, and faith and family. And I couldn't think of a more fitting guest to inspire us and to unpack some conversations today around the business of souls. What? Oh, yeah. And I think you were recently over this summer, you got some additional credentials. So let's start by paying honor and due to that. So tell me about how your summer concluded. What happened?
So I graduated with my PhD.
Yay!
Yes, thank you. Church and ministry leadership. And so it's been a great accomplishment. And I think that's probably why we're finally getting our time. It took us a while, but that was just something
that and the boys that
and the boys. Yes, that and the boys. But no, it's been wonderful. It was something that I've been in school for 7 years. So this was not, this took me a little bit of time because I've been working and growing family and doing ministry at the same time. And so I will say it was just such a great accomplishment, something that I did that I thought was God ordained for me to do and walk through. And it was not easy. And so, we never give ourselves, a pat on the back or just kind of take some time to really sit in and celebrate what we do. And this one has been one that I've been sitting in, and I'm just grateful that just God allowed me to get through. And now I'm like, this is when the real work begins. And so I was just newly installed as a pastor at a church, Bethlehem Baptist Church in York, Pennsylvania. I'm proud to be their pastor. Yes, I grew up in that church. And so the real
circle. That's like a full circle.
It is a full circle. A place that,
Did you know this? Seriously, now we know that. So when you were sitting in the pew at the church, growing up as a little girl, if you were like me, because I was a church girl growing up, right, with the patent leather shoes, cute little dresses, and all the things. My mom was that girl, and she made me that girl. But I can tell you that when mom wasn't looking, I might have been doing some shenanigans, right? When I was on the choir, even when the joke really wasn't joking, I was the one snickering with the friends on the choir stand, hoping mama didn't see me, but she always did. So tell me, your little girl in that church, wow, tell me, did you see yourself up there, or was there a calling at a certain point in time? Need to unpack this.
That's a great question. And it's ebbs and flows. Number one, to answer your question, we'll start off with, did I ever see myself up there, especially in that church and as pastor? No, that was something that God placed in my heart probably about, maybe I'll say 3 years ago, where I knew I was called to pastor. And I knew that I really loved that church. And if I was going to pastor, it was my heart's desire to do it there. And so that God just blessed me. He gave me the desires of my heart. And I knew that he would not place it in my heart, without following through on it, but you never know how God is going to work. So I was like, oh, maybe, 20 years from now, or after I go pastor my first church, who knows? But to go back to the initial calling as a young girl, I was always intrigued and um, attentive to preaching and good preaching. So even as a little girl, like I knew some of, my favorite preachers in York, where I grew up. We had some really great preachers. My dad was a great preacher. So I've always been around good preaching and articulate men and women. And so I knew that I always wanted to do something where I'm speaking. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a lawyer. Maybe so I've always, been into words and how you utilize words and the rhythm of utilizing words. And I did sing for a while. I started singing in my church. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe
That's like a little humble seed right there. Okay. Yeah. We might have you break out in something before we leave.
Oh, goodness. Used to. And so I got comfortable in front of people. And so I was like, well, maybe this is where God is taking me. And for 9 years, I served as a worship leader. And so you have to speak. And I was like, well, maybe this is how I'm going to fulfill this calling to preach or to do this thing. And then I would say probably in college, I went to Howard University and I was a part of the Howard Gospel Choir. And
I'm not going to have a shade at all that we just played FAMU at the Orange Blossom.
Oh, I saw that. That was not. Nope.
Look at that over there. Go back to the testimony. Go back.
Yeah. And so, I'm exposed to people my age, kids that aren't, afraid to say what they feel God has called them to do. And you have preachers, you have teachers, and the calling just started to come back to me. Cause I thought like once I left church, it wasn't my intent to be like, I'm not going to be this woman that goes to church all the time. I love God. I love to sing. I did that. I'm a PK. I probably should have said that. Yeah. So my dad was my pastor, and my dad pastored at our church for 50 years.
Wow.
And so that was a life that I could honestly did not want myself. And it's not a life that I wanted to put a spouse or children through.
Yeah. That's real. Yeah. I mean, and I'm so eager to talk a little bit more about that, because someone's listening to this and they are inspired by the business of ministry. And I believe they'll be blessed when we unpack a couple things. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Yeah. And so I just began to really just listen to that voice and that call. And I remember one year when I finally told my father, like, hey, I'm kind of tired of trying to figure this out, trying to run from this feeling that I'm called to preach. This is what year is this? Maybe 2012. And I said, I believe I'm called to preach. And he was like, yeah, I know that. So yes. So he's like, if this is, and I think he never wanted to put that pressure on me. So he would say things and we would, laugh about it. But I don't think he ever wanted to put that on me, that's a calling that you personally have to accept yourself. And so he said, okay, like, let's start thinking about this. Let's start talking through this. And we spent probably, like 6 months to a year talking through. And then I did my initial sermon, and I just served as an itinerant preacher, going to different churches, and pastors started inviting me to preach Sunday morning when they weren't, they were on vacation, or like, when they're like, hey, I need a break. But I want my church to have a pastoral word. And I'm like, pastoral word, like, I just, this is just something I like, I'm enjoying doing, growing. And then I would say about 3 years ago, it's happened pretty fast. Three to 4 years ago, God pretty much, said, you're called to pastor. And timing, it's so funny because right after that, my dad asked all of his associates, what is next in your call? Yeah. And so I let him know that. And so we started looking at he was like, let's start looking at churches. I see churches all the time. And then in between that time, my father got sick, and he started to just express that, hey, I'm ready to transition. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And so honestly, I just kind of waited for the process.
Wow.
He knew that I wanted to pastor. The church that I pastor at Bethlehem, they know how serious I am about the word and God's people. And so he presented two names, and
Yours was
rest
one.
is history. Yes.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so you talk about 3 years
Hmm.
kind of being really quick. And it
Yeah.
really is quick in one sense, but it's fast in another sense when you're
Mhm.
making a transition from
Yes.
being a sheep to shepherding sheep.
Yes.
Um, tell us about the perhaps the word I want to use
Hmm.
is the seriousness by which one assumes this responsibility. Because we all know it's not trivial, but we live in a day where people are building platforms and all the things, and there's a whole lot of sifting through what is real and what's not, quite frankly. Um, tell me about your journey to say this
Mhm.
this is a call, this is my heart, and I understand the severity of it. Like, tell me about that. Because I even think about that leading people in a corporate sense, right? Like, it could be 5 people or 500. Like,
Yeah.
even in a secular sense, when God positions me to
Yeah.
have a responsibility for another soul, I have to take that seriously, even in a secular sense. So tell me what that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think, well, what I can say is that I believe God was always preparing me for this transition and a role this serious. And
Wow.
it's funny because you never appreciate things until you can kind of look back on them. And so I think about the first job that I had. I worked at the Pennsylvania Lottery, and my first year I was like a research analyst, and then the second year I became a marketing manager. And
Hmm.
so the other marketing manager, she had been there her entire career. And I'll just say this, I don't think that her and others around me thought that I was old enough or had been there enough years to have that role. And there's some days I probably felt the same, right? But
Yes.
I was placed there. I had to at 2 years out of college, and I went to Howard University, so I probably it wasn't, you come from a place where everything about you is celebrated, and then you go into a corporate setting, right, where people aren't celebrating everything about you, or what you celebrate about yourself is not necessarily something to celebrate for them.
Yes.
So it was such a quick to go from Howard University to that.
Hmm.
And so I had to become serious really quick. I had to do a lot on my own because what I thought I would be able to depend on my colleagues for, very seldom could I. In
Mm.
in certain ways, there were things said and done, and so I left that place a little broken, I'll say.
Wow.
But I walked into another situation where I was able to progress. I was a manager. And so I don't necessarily look at that situation as a bad situation. I feel like it was just essential for my growth.
Mm.
It told me, like, the areas I where I don't want to be, where I don't want to work, a type of environment that I don't want to work. It taught me about how leaders really set the tone and the culture of an organization. And so, you can be a change agent sometimes, but then there's other situations where you just have to kind of, if you want to be there, you have to figure out how to live in the culture.
Mhm.
And so I say,
And
all,
knowing the difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
and not,
not trivial because a lot of people come in hot. They
yes,
don't take time to really do what you just said. Are you
yes.
meant to be of that culture for a little bit? Or are you meant to change that
Yes.
culture. Like,
Yes.
what truly is the assignment?
Yes. And so I didn't stay there long.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that was my intent, but I learned a lot. I was there for 4 years maybe, but I learned a lot, and it opened my eyes to just how to treat people, um, how to maneuver through, difficult circumstances. And so I say all that to say all of my work experience, I really feel like it prepared me for for the church.
Yes.
Even organizational behavior and administration and organization, I'm very organized. And those are just some of the things that I feel like those are the strengths that I think I'll have to utilize initially in this role. And so I think my work experience prepared me for the church, and I'm still working. I'm a bivocational. I enjoy um, being in both settings. It can be a lot, but I enjoy being able to learn in one area and then take it, to another area. But as far as the seriousness of souls, that was quick because as I shared with you, this is a church that I grew up in. So I know most of the members. I know all of the members, but I know many of them intimately. I called them aunt, their kids. I call a cousin. Went to school with some of their kids. And so I had to, and this is something that I'll be honest, I don't like to do, but I had to kind of set the tone,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the transition in relationships,
Yeah.
because I am no longer in this setting. I am not your niece.
Yes.
I'm not your second daughter. We can still have those relationships, but I had to kind of build different relationships with people. And I had to be the one to do that, to remind people, hey, I'm not Erin in here, because I have to set the tone and the culture. And then you do that by also giving people that respect. I don't call my aunts aunt in the church, their sister so and so, because I want other people to see how I treat them and what they should be called. And so it was a lot of transition and change. But I will say it's been it's been good. It hasn't been as difficult as I imagined.
Yes.
I think it's all about what you said. I think that word is important. We probably don't use it enough, but it's because I'm serious about what I do. And when people see that you're serious about this role and what you do, they respect that. And when you follow through, they respect that. Like when I come to preach on Sunday morning, I am always prepared.
Yeah.
Like I don't, yeah, I have a lot going on this week, but you call me the pastor. And so on Sunday mornings, that's when I show you that I work,
Yeah.
right? That's when I show you all. And so I'm serious about the word that I bring. I try to be as authentic as I can be. I'm the first female pastor of this church.
Wow, that's huge.
It is.
Because it's culture setting, right? So, and when I'm listening to you, I love how you pointed out, even from the very beginning, you were probably being prepared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of those things that allowed you to stand out and to be different and to do all the things as a change agent in your first career, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really, it sounds like it's exactly what you needed to reintroduce yourself, not only as the leader of the church,
Yes.
but new relationship to people that you've known forever. That's incredible.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it has been good. I think that there's more when people know you, they're more skeptical because they're like, okay, I know Erin. I
Yes.
know she's busy. She always,
Yes.
so you have to be honest about other people's perception of you, and it can't be all about your perception of yourself.
Yes.
And so,
How do you deal with that? So, because that's a big one. I think
yeah, yeah.
perception is a really, really big one. And so here's where my question lies in that.
Mm-hmm.
We all hear perception is reality in any
Mm-hmm.
conversation that you may have and anything that may happen, right? And so that gives me agency over what I perceived and you
Right.
agency over what you perceive. which is, there has to be still yet an anchor position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that becomes the challenge for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you grew up in the church. So a lot of what people say, it comes back to you somehow, right?
Yes.
So, and I honestly, I love that. Like people are like, oh, well, such and such said, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay. So, but I enjoy that, and I take things, I laugh if it's, some things have, but it truly gives you an idea of what people are talking about, right? And where their minds are. And so let's be real. Okay. I'm called to do this. I'm studied it, something that God called me to do, but that's something that people don't know. What they know is that I'm the daughter of the previous pastor, right?
Mhm.
I work, I have a busy family. I'm a
Talented athletic boys.
yes, yes.
Married
I'm
to a talented athletic legacy
yes,
man.
yes. And so they're
And
like,
not too
okay.
bad yourself.
Yes. And they're like, okay. And she for like I said, for 10 years, I was preaching out at different places. So now she's gonna, every Sunday she's going. And so being honest about like not how you see yourself or what do you need to show the people?
Yes.
Right. And that is your response. I'm not saying that you have to prove anything to anybody, um, but I do have a responsibility to show the people who I am, right? And so you may hear or think, but this is who I am in this season. This is what I'm willing to give and do. And then that's when you can expect whatever reciprocal, the relationship is going to be, but you first have to show the people that called you to the position, right?
Yeah.
That you're serious about it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes even I'll probably say younger preachers or younger professionals, sometimes, that's the one thing we don't want to do. We feel like, oh, I don't have to prove myself to anybody. And it's
Yes.
not really a proving,
Mhm.
right? We really probably have to prove more to ourselves than we do to other people.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but when you're leading people, right, you have a responsibility to let them know that they're in a safe place, that they can trust you, right? That you know what you're talking about, that you study, and that when you don't know something, you say, oh, well, I'll figure that out. Like you have a responsibility to be authentic and transparent, especially in a spiritual space, right? Because that's what we're asking other people to do. We're really asking people to trust us with their hearts, with their children. We're asking them to have faith in a God who they can't see, right? And so you have to make the word. One of the things that I like to do is I like to make the word practical. How do I apply it to my life? But then also how can I be honest about the things of God that I may not truly understand and I have to learn how to trust? If they can't trust you as their pastor, it's going to be hard for them to really walk a deeper faith walk and have trust in God. And I see all that as intertwined.
Mhm.
Um and so I do try to like I'm on Facebook. I try to kind of show people a little bit into my life without showing too much, but I'm a person just like everybody else. I have flaws, I have things that I need to do. I like you to respect my time, and so I'm going to respect your time. And so I think all of those things in this little bit of time, like when people ask me how things are going at the church, I've been there. I've been working in the pastoral role since January. So, but I just got installed
Yes.
in August. But it's been going so well, and I can only attribute that to first of all, God is good, God is faithful,
Yes, he is.
and that is, and when whatever God ordains and designs for us, it works out,
Mm.
right? But we're people, and so I would just say like I respect them. I'm serious about the role, and I think in return, like they're excited about also you know working alongside with me in ministry, and so it's working. It's been going well. We've also had challenges,
Mhm.
but I think when people respect one another, when we know that we're all serious and care about the church and about ministry, you get through it. You get through it. So
I think it's really neat when you can get to a place of authenticity
hmm
and ministry leadership. I believe that I grew up in an era where the late Reverend Dr. Clay
mm.
was um, revered and somewhat feared. Not a deity, but certainly maybe from my viewpoint as a little girl at the time, feeling
Mhm.
like, oh my God, that's the Reverend, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was a time pre-social media. So perhaps, and I remember him being such a kind and gentle person in person, but there was still a level of sort of, you know, maybe us imparting on
Mhm.
him this, this position, right? And I wonder if we live in a space now where our pastoral leaders can leverage social media as a tool
Mhm.
to help us all to understand that you are people too. I
Yes.
think there's so much value and benefit in that. I think for me, I think two things are valuable. One, it doesn't make it such a foreign consideration if God taps you on the shoulder
Mhm.
to do some assignments for him,
Mhm.
because you feel like, well, I see a human that I sit in the pew and listen to every day. So I know that they are not, an angel from heaven, so to speak. So if they are not an angel from heaven and I feel like I'm tapped, okay, maybe I can humbly do this, even though I'm like, are you sure you tapped the right person? Right? Like, what are
Mhm.
you doing? Because, huh? But I think that that's one thing that perhaps makes it more approachable for more souls to say, yes, I
Mhm.
I see it and I feel the calling and I'm willing to be vulnerable and let you lead me. The other thing that I would say is in their ability to be human, we now can see that they're not perfect.
Yes.
And they're living an imperfect life in imperfect environments, just like we are. And I think that both of those things are good news for us.
Mhm.
But that's me. What do I know, right? I'm curious to hear what you think.
I do. I think that I will say I'm happy to be pastoring in this age.
Yeah.
I think that social media and even, us being, we have Zoom, we have
Yes.
virtual ways that we can interact with one another. So I can have meetings virtually. You can email one another. So there are so many new and different ways to connect with people. Some of my really good friends in ministry today, because at one point women in ministry, especially pastoring, they we're just first all over the nation, the world, really. And so I didn't know too many women pastors. I didn't have close relationships with too many women
Yeah.
pastors, and some of my
I didn't
close.
grow up seeing that.
Right, right. Um, I- some of my closest friends who are pastors are ones that I've met because we linked virtually. Like we were all, on a virtual class or conference and, started to communicate. And then as you go to conferences, you run into these people and you get to know them. And so I'll say the connection um with colleagues is really great because of social media. But even with members or there are people that we're on Facebook, and so there are people who will reach out and say, hey, I listened to the word on Facebook and it touched me this way, or I'm wondering about this, or I'm gonna try to get to the church on this date. I can't be there every Sunday. I have members now in Washington D.C., in Maryland. And so they're not there every Sunday, but they're there when they can get to the church physically, but then they attend online with us virtually when they can't. And so that part, that piece in regards to connecting is it's a benefit, to the church, because now you have access to people with different resources, experiences. And so, the church always needs volunteers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point you were kind of limited to the people who lived, around you, which was has always worked, but now it opens up. I think, the more diverse the church is, the more that it benefits from skills and knowledge. And then in regards to my life, it does allow me to share. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I was already on social media and then became a pastor, it's not really anything new to our membership that I like to post pictures. And like when we travel, I share pictures, or I'm again going back to my experience, I was in marketing, right? That was my background. And so I have for the most part, for my boys basketball um, you know, career. They're of course younger, but I've ran their social media pages. And so that's something that I love to do. I love to create flyers. I like to be creative. And so that's something that I use in the pastoral role, but also in my personal life. I think one challenge is how much do you share, right? Especially now that I'm getting into this pastoral role, I feel like I'm always with people. I'm always talking. They're always asking questions, which I'm very open about. But now I'm like, there are some days where like we just went on vacation for a few days, no basketball, no ministry work. My husband took off and I took pictures, but I didn't post a lot because I just needed some personal us time. And
Yes.
so that is one thing that you have to learn to balance. How much do you share, right? What do you share? And that in itself, it has to align with also who you share in person, right?
Yes.
So, you know, if you're going to share, just be clear about, again, we talk about perception, be clear about what you want people to know about you or to think about you.
And what the conversation is going to be. Because when church
Yeah.
wraps up, if
Yes.
you're sharing, everything, then
Yeah.
don't be offended if sister so and so, instead of talking about the word you just delivered, wants to talk about the water park trip, right?
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So,
Now that's
yeah.
dropping some knowledge for
Yeah.
sure. Mhm.
But it helps because you have different even administratively, there's so many tools that we now have access to as pastors that, like, when I saw my dad writing his sermons, he didn't have access to those tools. He didn't have access to tools that allowed him for time management. He had to go to the church to meet. He had to
Yes.
go to people's houses to counsel. And so there's so many benefits to being a pastor today that pastors have at their fingertips to utilize. So I am definitely one who I utilize anything that makes my life easier,
Yes.
but also allows me to connect to people or with people, especially, I'm working. So things that are quick, when I'm driving home, I can, call someone on, and we can have a phone conversation on my way home, So I try to definitely utilize
All the tools.
all the tools, all the things. Yes.
So we need to pivot into thinking about so many people that are listening to this conversation who um, will not say that they believe, at least at this point, they're tapped to ministry as a title, but they do feel a responsibility to carry their faith forward, right?
Yes.
And their beliefs forward. And everybody has sort of a different thing that gets them there, right? For a lot of people coming out of 2020, for sure has been a thing. I know for me, there were two books, one that I had received and read long before 2020 that really came to me at a time in my career, probably like 2010 or 2013 or so, that really got me thinking about the integration of my life and business and my faith, and God placing me in circumstances similar to you with great leadership and voice and influence in what would be considered the most tumultuous of times. Like, why when I got the role it was nice and then it became, a divestiture, or why when I, looked at the job it was stable and it became a transformational assignment. Why I went right. And so, girl, the amount of times that I went to him saying, wait a minute, what, why? And I think now, thanks to a couple of resources. So the one book that really grabbed me initially was this one called Kingdom Calling, by Amy L. Sherman. I don't know if you know this one,
No.
but man, I would love you to read it just so that we can go back and talk about it. It's vocational stewardship for the common good, and it really got me grounded in understanding that you don't have to be in the economic structure business of ministry to be in the business of ministry, as we all are, should be in the business of ministry in some discipleship in some way, even if everybody's in a different lane in their level of what that means to them. But even if that means showing up in your place of work with a heart of love, right? Like, there still is an assignment there. That was one. And then the other one was this book by John Mark Comer, which coincidentally my pastor brings up a lot. And I laugh because I found this book in 2020. It's The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is another one, where those two books, that one really got me sort of centered around being still, living a much more holistic life as a follower of Jesus Christ, and still unpacking everything, right? So trust and know I'm not the Reverend Doctor on this call, and I'm very clear on that. But I'd love to hear, as you minister and as you think about the environment that we're all living and functioning and operating in, my listeners are, like I said, these women that are doing the thing. What would be your encouragement or your words or any resources that you have for them in this ultra dynamic environment where we're trying to show up so completely for our families and ourselves and our calling?
Yes. I would say, and I've always gravitated toward books about the heart. There's one book that I read, The Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. And then there's actually a book that I just started. I can show you. I don't do the physical books, but I do
the audibles.
Yes. And this one I just start. Oh, and also The Garden from Within. Anita Phillips. She's awesome. But then I started, Matters of the Heart. So healing your relationship with yourself and those you love by Thema Bryant, Dr. Thema Bryant. I personally love books about the heart that I read in between like other books that I'm reading, because you always have to be centering you, right? You always have to be thinking about your heart and the healing of your heart. And I believe that our ministry and the things that we desire flow from the heart. Wow. And so the condition of our heart is so important. It's interesting. I just preached on Luke 8, where Jesus was telling the parable about, he was talking about sharing a parable with the disciples. And really it just talks about what happens to his seed when God puts something in your heart. What happens to it based on the condition of your heart, right? There's some hearts that his word can fall on. He can give you something that you're meant to do. But if your heart is thorny, it doesn't get a chance to get deep inside your heart. And when something comes and distracts you, it takes the seed right away. And now you're looking again for like, what, God, what am I supposed to be doing? A lot of us were always like trying to figure out, God, what am I supposed to be doing? And, and that is a responsibility to us, but God drops so much in our heart. If we would just kind of just stay there for a little bit. We're always, searching, and that's just the world that we live in, right? There's so many distractions. Then there's some hearts that we have so much going on that the seed gets into our heart, but it's smothered by all the other things that we think are important, trying to be this person for that person, we're worried and stressed. And so the word of God has to be able to fall on good ground. Yeah. And so our heart, the condition of our heart is so important. And so that's one of the things that I'm always leading people to do as they're searching or as they're studying, whatever you're called to do, we all have a responsibility, right? We all have a responsibility in ministry, regardless of the level, right, of ministry that we want to do. I used to teach a class called Business as Ministry for entrepreneurs who they don't necessarily have a business, ran on ministry, but they want their ministry their business to be pleasing to God. Yeah. And so how I treat people, how I think about the services I provide, how I think about my policies and how I talk to people. And we talked about culture. And so it's not about ministry per se, it's how do I handle business in a way that's pleasing to God? How do I align myself as much as I can to the principles of God's word? But we always need to be healing. Mm-hmm. We always need to be caring for ourselves and caring. We can't care for others if we have a closed heart and we're not caring for ourselves.
I think you need to say that for the Chiefs.
Yeah, we cannot.
It's an old mindset where I can think of people in my life right now who are so give oriented, as if you can give your way to, the future that you envision, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't take any time to replenish.
Yes.
And what you're really, really bringing to the forefront is when the word says, let the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Yes. Man, oh my God. Thinking about that as your soil. What?
Yes. And so your heart has to be in the right place. You could have all the great ideas that you want, right?
Yes.
And begin working on, if you're not healing, if you're not well, right? If you're not good to people, if your heart is not in the right place, good ideas, right? And creative ideas, come to ruin. And sometimes they're successful. And we're not happy because the heart, at the end of the day, your heart has to be in the right place if you're going to experience the spiritual blessings of God in what you do. And so that's something that I'm big on and a proponent on, regardless of where you are and what you're, searching for, focus on your heart. You should always take a few days out the month, sit and, journal, whatever it is that you do. You need to have some way of, knowing the condition of your heart. How is your heart today?
What do you do? Tell us what you do.
So what I love to journal.
Yes,
I love to journal, and I don't have a specific time that I journal. Sometimes if I have time in the morning, I'll journal, but after I read a book, I'll journal, or a lot of times it's good for me to kind of get my thoughts out before I prepare a sermon, so that the sermon is not about me, right? Let me figure out where my headspace is right now. Yes. And then I can work on this word and not be focused on me. So that's one of the things that I love to do. I also like, there is a centering prayer that I like to do. I think the term for it is Lectio Divina, but really it's a taking one scripture or one thought or something that you just want to focus on. And I'll take 5 to 10 minutes and I'm just either repeating that scripture or keeping that thought in mind. And if something else comes into my mind, like, okay, let me refocus, but it's just kind of a meditation. And that's something that I love to do. Cause it's discipline for me to not think about other things.
Yes, that's all of us. You cannot be a driven woman in this day and age, managing all the things and not fight against the distractions that come in our own very mind. How many times have I sat down to meditate, as you're saying, and, oh, you need to da 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 da. You need to da 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 da. You need to da 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 da. To the point where I now, and I used to say, okay, I'll just open the notes app on my phone, and as they come up, I'll type it. Well, unfortunately, now the phone has now, oh, you got this email from this person. Oh, you got this text from this person. Oh, and so now I gotta put that away and go back to a little pocket moleskin and a pen that I keep with me in my purse. So when I have that I can write it down real quick and then let it go. Because what I'm finding, I needed a strategy that takes me away from the distractions that are going to come, because I am managing a household as a woman and a wife. And I am managed corporately, souls, and assignments that, authority have asked me to take responsibility for. So with all of, and I'm holding myself accountable to what was poured into my spirit to launch Proven Not Perfect, and to honor him in the process, as he's showing me what we doing. And I'm just on for this ride.
And there's one last book, because you said something earlier, that soul care, it's something that never gets old, right? That is something that we are constantly saying. There's a book called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership. And the author, her first name is Helen. I have to get her last name. But I read this book years ago, but I've seen online, this book is resurfacing. People are reading it and sharing it as a great book for not only just soul care, but a lot of like disciplines, like just meditation, prayer. So if you're trying to figure out what your thing is and what grounds you, that book has really great suggestions. No matter what, field you're in, but suggestions of how to really ground yourself, strengthening the soul of your leadership.
Strengthening the soul of your leadership. Girl, okay, so look, I could talk to you for another month of Sundays, for real.
Yes, this is fun.
Even in meeting you in a personal space, there was just something that radiated just around you, and my soul felt very comfortable and connected. And I'm so grateful that you said yes to sharing in this community, in this podcast. I'd love to have you back. There's so many things we can
absolutely.
And so let's consider that. But until then, I am so grateful to you. I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I'm grateful that you answered the call and said yes, and that you were, so vulnerable to share with us a little bit of your journey there.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Likewise, I feel like when we met each other, it was almost like destiny, divine. And so I appreciate you having me, and I would love to come back. So thank you.
See you later, girl.
Yeah, thank you.